Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well and happy December. We are finally done with November, and I am not done with my November TBR, unfortunately. I think I'm in this type of curse where I just cannot read more than 4 books a month for the past few months now, ever since I started reading them, because every month I try to say that I'm going to be reading like at least 5 to 6 books a month, but always ends up being four for one reason or the other. That is why, as you might have guessed, I couldn't get to my entire November TBR in this month, unfortunately. So I'm gonna have to push that to next month. But it was still a very good reading month overall. I hope you guys had a great November, and now it's like holiday season, and like December has a whole new vibe to it, right? So yeah, I do have some reading plans for December, but I'm kind of scared of putting reading plans now because anytime I put some ambitious reading goal, it's just, falling apart at the seams. So I'm just gonna take it one step at a time. So in this video, I'm gonna be talking about the books that I read this month. As some books I've already talked about in like previous videos, I'm just gonna talk about them again in a briefer way, or perhaps give thoughts from a different angle. I don't know. I'm just gonna go with whatever comes up. So yeah, let's start. So this month, as I said, I've read 4 books again. Four is like it feels like it's like the magic number. Like it's just never exceeding four. We'll see when I'm gonna exceed 4 books. Hopefully it's gonna be December, but I'm not gonna make any promises. So yeah, what I basically what I yeah, what I started, let me start with the Dream God duology. So I'm basically going to talk about all the books that I had in my TBR, even the ones I did not get to, just to give like a briefing as to where I am in those books. So I'll start with the Dream God duology, the first book that I read in November from the Dream God duology, which was a reread. It's called The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. Now, this was a reread for me, and I enjoyed it the second time more than the first. So like the first time when I read this book, I was just very confused at the beginning. I was expecting, heavy plot, like, because back then when I used to read fantasy, I used to only read it for like the plot and the action, right? So with the Killing Moon, it doesn't really start off like that. It's like very contemplative, calm, atmospheric type of read at first, where we just explore ideas, and the writing is all shrouded in mystery. It's a very beautiful writing style, I must say. It's a fantasy novel inspired by ancient Egypt, so we have a lot of ancient Egyptian atmosphere. We have this like beautiful desert that we just imagine like being like all, with like red sand dunes and, a bit of a dark, hazy heat everywhere. It's that type of imagery that I personally got while reading the Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. And the city of Gujare, which was like the main city that is being explored, it's a city that is governed by uh, a religious order called the Hetawa, and that religious order maintains the peace in the city. So our problem comes when there is corruption within the Hetawa. So we follow two gatherers, Ehiru and Nijiri. Ehiru is the senior gatherer, I must say, among the two, and Nijiri is like his apprentice, who is about to turn into a gatherer. He has not turned into a gatherer yet, but he is about to become a gatherer. So gatherers are people who are sent by the Council of Hetawa to basically go inside people's dreams when they're sleeping, people they have deemed corrupt, and to end their lives, basically. I try not to say murder because they do not like to be referred as murderers, even though for some people they are murderers. So we basically deal with dream magic. It's a very interesting, unique type of fantasy, and N.K. Jemisin herself in this book, like in the afterwards, she said that she was inspired by Jungian psychology and Carl Jung's dream theory on dream psychology. That was a big part of it, and she was also inspired by Egyptian mythology and the pantheon of ancient Egypt. Uh, so it's very interesting. It's a very interesting book. I really loved it the second time around. I appreciated the writing style. It's so honey, like it's like very nice and pretty, and there's always this mystery in the air. It's like this type of thing where the reading experience does feel like a dream in a way. Uh, I personally loved it. So yeah, that's like one book that I highly recommend. By Jemison. Now the second book by her that I'm reading now actually is called The Shadowed Sun. I am still like 100 pages in. I did not really make any meaningful progress last week with this book. I just like stopped at 100 pages because I had another reading priority that suddenly came up. So far in this one, now we are dealing with the aftermath of the first book. So we have what I like is that it's still the same town, where the city, not a town we're dealing with, but we are expanding our point of view, right? So we are now dealing with more perspectives, with more point of views, and we are looking at the city from different angles, from new characters who have their own agendas going on. We have somebody who he believes he has a right to the throne of Gujare, and then we have people from the Hetawa like trying to push their agenda onto the city to be able to basically to be able to restore peace in the way that they believe should be restored. We are also following um, a female what was it called? My memory is a bit fuzzy. Sharer, who basically is also deals with dream magic, but she deals with dream magic to be able to heal people. So she goes inside their dreams and she heals them. And if they have injuries on the outside, it basically gets healed through dream magic. And she is the first female sharer, so that's very not interesting. So she has to deal with the prejudices against her gender, as a female. Uh, it's very nice. And then we also have some characters who are returning from the first book. I will not mention who because then it would spoil the first book. So far it's nice. It's starting off slow. I'm not sure if this book is bigger than the first one, than the Killing Moon, because I had the Killing Moon on my Kindle, so I don't really know. But like I don't know the thickness of it to judge. But I don't know. Like so far it's slow. We're just getting into the atmosphere, getting into the book, and so far I'm interested. I'm cautiously interested. I can't say I'm extremely invested so far. Um but yeah, I am interested in it, and we'll see uh, how it fares. And I hope that I like it as much, if not more, than the Killing Moon, the first one. So yeah. Now the third book that I actually got to in my TBR was The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. Now this is a sci-fi book and the only sci-fi book I read for this month. And I personally loved it. It was very nice. It basically talks about meaninglessness and what is meaning. The idea is us trying to figure out what is the meaning of our lives, and we basically explore this to a character who has been like formerly like very hated person on planet Earth, and he is used by somebody else. He is sent to Mars, to planet Mars, you know to take part of an invasion from Mars to Earth. So that is the beginning premise. We uh we don't understand exactly why all this is happening, and he doesn't understand it either. He's just going with the flow. He's rolling with the punches, and he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna let all this absurdity happen to me. And it is a very absurd book. It's very funny in a dry way. One of the funniest like things about this book for me is the fact that really atrocious things can happen to the characters, and they would just take it in such a resigned way. Like, I don't know, somebody would die horrifically and then they'd be like, oh, okay, that's just how life is. Or some tragedy happens with them and they just accept it. This character is basically has to be plunged from one planet to the other. He goes from Mars to Mercury to one of the moons of Saturn, and then he goes back to Earth. And he doesn't even know why he's doing all of this. So we just like go through it. There are quite horrific things that happen in the book, and they are treated in such a detached, sardonic, cynical way, which I guess is the point of the book. It's like a commentary, dry humorous commentary on, how shit just happens in life. And we try to find meaning and to place meaning as to why this happens. And at the end of the book, we kind of get this big reveal as to what is the purpose of humanity in general. Like, why did we all, as a human collective humanity, come to that exact moment right there? And The revelation is kind of like a slap in the face. It's very funny. So yeah, it's this type of thing. Even though there is, like planet exploration, it's not really. I wouldn't say it's a space opera. It's more like, following somebody's adventures from one planet to the other, and it's funny. If you like dry humor, if you're into that sort of thing, then I would recommend you read this. It's like a very pleasant sci-fi book to read. So yeah, I enjoyed that one. It was a good read. Next was, I would say, one of the highlights of my reading month. It's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Now, this was a book we had agreed upon reading with friends, and I had an amazing time buddy reading this. It basically talks about two people who met as children, a girl named Sadie and a boy named Sam. And they basically met after Sam had a horrific car accident, and he unfortunately, uh, you know, gets disabled. So one of his legs is severely damaged, and he is severely also traumatized from that accident. So Sadie ends up meeting him at the hospital, and they develop this type of bond as children. And then we see how this bond develops through time over a 30-year period, and it's just beautiful. I love how realistic it is. I love how uh, we don't basically spend time in fluff. We it isn't it's not I'm not saying it's a tragic book, but there are a lot of tragic moments, but those tragic moments are, gently nestled between very nice moments as well. So it's like very realistic in a way, you know? Uh it's very uh it's not something that's hard to believe. Like, because their relationship at when they were kids, it has this childlike idealism to it, and as we all know, as we grow up, we tend to lose that childlike idealism, and we tend to become more angry, we tend to become more traumatized by life's events, unfortunately, and those change our perspectives of relationships, and they can even challenge our relationships. A lot of friendships end because of those things, because through life we basically go on totally different paths, or we go through a lot of emotional struggles, and we kind of clash with the people around us. So these two characters, they go through a lot of difficult things together. Uh, they basically eventually, like, after their childhood, they meet a bit later in life in their late teen years to develop a video game together, and they start developing video games together. So it's a very nice book which has a heavy theme of video games. So if you like video games, you would also really enjoy that book. And, we see them clashing creatively, clashing on an emotional level sometimes, but then always somehow finding their way back to each other. But then there are some things that happen in the end where we're just like, are they really gonna come? Will they really find each other after all of this? You know, it's very nice. It has some frustrating things in it. I've talked about that in my previous video, where there are some characters, particularly one in mind, who, does very horrifying things, but he somehow doesn't get the punishment that they deserve throughout the book, and I was a bit upset at that. But then, like I said, this is quite a realistic book, and in realistic books, we don't get to, suffer the consequences of all our actions. Like, sometimes abuse just goes by unpunished, right? And sometimes people themselves who are abused, they do not know that they've been abused, or they don't like register it as abuse in their minds. So we have that type of thing going on. It's very emotional. It's a very heartwarming read. So I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's a very, very nice book. Uh, and yeah, like I gave it a 5 stars because, like, to me, it's just memorable, and I'll always remember that story. Now, the book that toppled all my reading plans, because I was supposed to read, I was supposed to finish The Shadowed Sun and at least try to finish two other smaller books. But I ended up just like being immersed into this one. It's called Blood Over High Haven by Emma Wong. Now, I freaking loved this book. We basically read it with the Fantasy Guild Book Club, which is a book that I'm part of, and it was just, oh god, it was amazing. So it's basically a dark academia fantasy. Um, it's very easy to read. It's very nice. It's very accessible for fantasy fans, and it's a very like I personally feel like the magic system is a very unique one where the author basically blends computer programming with magic. So it's very interesting. Like magic has a logical structure to it where we have a spellograph where we basically use it to write down spells and determine variables like just how we do in computer science and programming, and then we use magic to execute that spell. It's very nice. The city we are basically it's the story is centered in a city called Tyran, where it's a highly civilized city where there are a lot of technological advancements thanks to magic. So it's like a modern city in a way. Like we have cars, we have radios, we have trains, and but all of these are powered by magic. And basically, we have a character. Her name is Siona. She has been accepted as a high mage, and she is pursuing her education as a high mage, doing research, helping the city expand their barriers to be able to, uh, you know, use more sources to get magic and to expand themselves. So she's undertaking research. So we see her dark academia. It's like a dark academia thing, where she has fellow like students who are also high mages, but they're all male, and she's the only female. She's the first female in history to be, to be part of this to be part of this institution. So she is subjected to a lot of sexism. She is a very interesting character. She's very ambitious and she's very egotistical. So she's very like transparent about her ego. Like she is hungry for power. She wants to make her mark in this world because she has felt like she has been crushed by society as a female. She is not allowed to express who she is. She's not allowed to do whatever she wants to do. So she's just very angry and upset at the world, and she wants to kind of prove herself so much. And to do this, she wants to rise above everybody else in her institution. So we have her, and then we have a character named Thomim, who I also really loved, and he's part of the Quen. So the Quen are people who are outsiders, who came outside of the city. They are mainly refugees who came escaping from something called the Blight, which is a mystical, magical force that suddenly appears out of nowhere and burns and destroys people in its wake. It's a very horrific way of dying. You basically burn to death and you melt, and all that's left of you is basically bones. You're like skeleton. So he and his niece, they're the only ones from their tribe who have survived, and they made the crossing and entered the city. And the Quen who survive and go inside the city, they are basically treated like vermin. They're treated like lower class people. They are low income earners. They do lower level jobs in a way, and they're just very mistreated by the people. And in the city's religion, they are basically seen as corrupt people. They are basically paying the price of the corruption of their ancestors who did not accept the religion of the city. So he somehow ends up entangled with Siona, and they start working together. He becomes her assistant, and we basically explore their dynamic together, and them doing research to be able to further Siona's goals. But while doing this research, Siona and Thomil find out a horrifying thing that really shakes the two to their core, and we have to see how Siona reacts to that. The very foundations of her beliefs are challenged. The sanctity of the god that she worships, and the prophets in her religion is challenged. Like, I'm not sure if we can call them prophets, but they're like very high level people who are divine in nature in their religious role. And we have to see how this plays about. Will Siona be able to shift her beliefs and see reality in a way? It's just very nice. It's an interesting dynamic between Siona, who's somebody who has a lot of power as a high mage, and Thomil, who is like a Quen, who, you know, who is in a naturally subservient position to Siona. And we see that dynamic where both of them feel bad about it in a way, and they're trying to, especially Siona is trying to bridge the gap between the two. But sometimes, because of the cultural differences and the differences of their social station, it's very difficult. We also explore the value of, the Quen society, because the city itself sees the Quen as these barbaric people who have no culture. But we slowly do find out that they do have a highly rich culture that in some ways has even surpassed the culture of the city itself with their access to, to magic. So it's a very interesting thing. It's a very emotional book as well. Um, but it's also very fun to read. I could not like stop reading it. I ignored all my other reads just to delve through this one and finish it, and I really, really, really loved it. So the ending was extremely satisfying for me. Like I was like, oh my god, that's everything I kind of wanted in the ending. Like I was saying, oh, I wish the author ends this book this way, and then she ended up doing it. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe it. This novel does stand on its own. It is a standalone, but there is a potential for it to continue. There is a potential for a sequel. Like in the story itself, we can. I believe the author can continue the story if she wanted to, but I'm not sure if she will. I don't know if this is gonna be like a standalone, but I would really like to see a sequel and to see what happens next. But it was extremely satisfying to read and was very, very nice. Like, I think I'm gonna give it a 5 stars. I'm not sure yet. I'll let you guys know on Goodreads if you add me on there. I should actually link my Goodreads here. I realize I haven't linked it. Anyway, so yeah, amazing read, amazingly gratifying read. I loved it. I was like so happy to be able to read this book. Now, another book that I started today is part of my TBR is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. Now, this is a dark fairy tale type of book, and it was supposed to be part of my TBR this month. I was supposed to have finished it, but Blood Over Brighthaven happened, and I was not able to finish it. Um, it's so far I'm 50 pages in, and it's definitely a dark fairy tale. It has a very dark gothic vibe to it. I can definitely feel some gothic energy in this book. And the writing style is very earthy in a way. It's like this down to earth, earthy, very, I don't know how to describe it. Like it's very like immersive in its own way. It's a very immersive writing style and it's quite dark. The story is quite dark. We have some creepy things going on. We basically uh, follow a character whose sister has entered an abusive relationship with a prince. And, this is not a typical fairy tale where the prince is a savior. Here, the prince is a piece of shit. you know, the prince is an abusive piece of shit that is basically exploiting her family just to be able to be able to produce heirs. And in this book, we are following this main character who has to who wants to murder this prince. She wants to get rid of this prince and kill him to be able to save her family from him. You know. Again, it's a very dark book. We have a lot of like dark imagery. We have like talks of crypts. We have dark spells, witches. Like it's a very atmospheric type of book that's quite immersive. It's a tad whimsical in a way, not too whimsical, but not like Catherine Valente style whimsical, but it has like a touch of whimsicalness into it, but not too much that the darkness of the writing is lost. You know, this is all I can say so far because I'm only 50 pages in. I don't know what's going to happen next. But I will, obviously, like you guys know, hopefully by next week I would have finished this. I think I would have finished it for sure, actually. I think next Friday I would for sure give you a review of this book. But yeah, this is also something that I'm reading. Now, the last one on my TBR here was House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. Now, I did not get to this. I did not even start it, so I don't have anything to say about this book so far. Again, hopefully in the coming days I will get to it. So these are my priorities for now, these 3 books that I have, with me that I also have to read fast to return to the library. The Shadowed Sun, Nettle and Bone, and House of Hollow. So yeah, hopefully by next week, I'm not going to make any promises, but I hope that I can finish you know, these 3 books and also, plan out a little like another TBR for December. So yeah, guys, if you watch this all the way through, let me know if you've read any of these books. What do you think of them? If you're interested in reading any of these books, if it's not really your thing, uh, and tell me how your November went. How was your reading month, and what are your plans for December? All right, guys. So that's all for now, and I will hopefully see you guys for a new video next week. I hope you have a great weekend and a great start to your December month. Bye bye.